This is Top Accolade Global News Updates. I am Soibifa Jagrich. A month on from a huge earthquake that struck Japan's west coast, survivors are battling freezing and unsanitary conditions while tens of thousands of homes remain without running water. Some areas in the isolated Noto peninsula may not have water restored for another 2 months. The government of Ishikawa prefecture said, adding to risks for those living in cramped evacuation centers where authorities say respiratory infections and gastroenteritis have been detected. More than 230 people died in the magnitude 7.6 quake, Japan's deadliest in 8 years, which also left 44,000 homes fully or partially destroyed, while 40,000 have no running water. More than 13,000 residents are living in evacuation centers, according to the Ishikawa government. Chisa Terashita, a mother of 3 who evacuated from her wrecked home in Suzu, said that immediately after the quake, she and her husband drank as little water as possible to conserve what they had, and still faced tough decisions on how to ration water to keep the family healthy. Authorities in Ishikawa prefecture are set to begin vaccinating evacuees for influenza on Thursday. Around mid-afternoon on Tuesday, at a primary school in Suzu, where around 4,800 houses still have no water, children played on the swings while locals gathered around a communal water tank that has become a lifeline for many. As evening fell, residents gathered to bathe in a makeshift public bath set up at the school by soldiers sent in to help with relief work, an improvement from immediately after the quake when people would queue for an hour in the rain for 5 liters of water. A Delaware judge tossed out Elon Musk's record-breaking $56 billion Tesla opens new tab pay package on Tuesday, calling the compensation granted by the EV maker's board an unfathomable sum that was unfair to shareholders. Shares of Tesla dropped about 3% in extended trade, and some investors seized on the ruling in hopes it might prompt Tesla to overhaul its governance. The Tesla board has been criticized as failing to provide oversight of its combative headline-making CEO, who has fought regulators and led several other companies at the same time. The ruling, which can be appealed, nullifies the largest pay package in corporate America. The judge found the share-based compensation was negotiated by directors who appeared beholden to Musk, currently ranked by Forbes magazine as the world's richest person. McCormick, director the Tesla shareholder, who challenged the pay plan to work with Musk's legal team on an order implementing the decision. It can be appealed to the Delaware Supreme Court once the parties agree on a final order and on fees for the shareholders' attorneys, which will be paid by Tesla. The decision comes as Tesla warns of slowing growth and the electric vehicle industry is re-evaluating demand. Tesla has become the world's most valuable automaker on the marks, but much of that value is based on expectations of future breakthroughs such as self-driving robotaxis. Musk's lawyer did not immediately reply to an email seeking comments. The seeds of former flight attendant Misako Totori's rise to the top of Japan Airlines opens new tab were planted in the aftermath of the carrier bankruptcy more than a decade ago. Totori, who rose through the ranks from cabin crew to chief customer officer, takes over as president of JAL in April, becoming one of the few women to lead a major global airline. Qantas opens new tab, has a woman boss, and KLM and Air France opens new tab, are led by women who reports to a male group CEO. The absence from cabin to boardroom is notable in a country where advancement opportunities are still limited for women. Japan's gender wage gap is the worst among the group of 7 G7 countries. While Totori's nomination is a sign of change in Japan's Incorporated, it also reflects JAL's sweeping organization Swift after a turnaround by industrialist Kazuo Inamori following its 2010 bankruptcy. Inamori, the founder of electronics company Coursera, opens new tab, and mobile operator KDDI opens new tab, who died in 2022, was tapped by the government to revive Zhao, known in Japan as the god of management. The ordained Buddhist monk prized hands-on experience and said the career long neglected customers. Her appointment was proof Inamori's philosophy of focusing on the front line still exists, as Zhao, one Zhao executive said, disdainful of hierarchy and the unquestioning obedience to rules. Inamori encouraged all staff to act as business leaders, the executive said. Totori becomes the fourth post-bankruptcy president and the first former flight attendant. Two of her predecessors came from engineering and maintenance, and one was a pilot. Zhao's board wanted a next president to have experience in the trenches. Three executives said. Current boss Yuji Akasaka, who becomes chairman in April, came from engineering and maintenance. Outgoing chairman Yoshiharu Yueki, a former pilot, was particularly opposed to having a president with little practical experience, said one of the executives, a person familiar with Zhao's thinking. China's manufacturing activities contracted for the fourth straight month in January, an official factory survey showed on Wednesday, suggesting the sprawling sector and the broader economy were struggling to regain momentum at the start of 2024. The official purchasing manager index (PMI) rose to 49.2 in January from 49.0 in December, driven by a rise in output, but still below the 50 mark, separating growth from contraction. It was in line with a median forecast of 49.2. The data provides the first official snapshot of how the world's number 2 economy has started off the new year after a shakier than expected post-COVID recovery. The latest figure is also expected by the Lunar New Year, which will fall on February 10th this year, as factories may shut earlier and send workers back home ahead of the holiday. January's new orders sub-index was at 49.0, contracting for the fourth month, according to the NBS survey. Weak external demand also dragged on manufacturing activity, with the new export orders index registering at 47.2, contracting for the 10th straight month. To spur growth, China's central bank governor Pan Zhongcheng unexpectedly announced a cut to banks' reserve requirements ratio at a press conference last week. Authorities face a daunting task as they try to revitalize the economy in the face of a property downturn, local government debt risk, deflationary pressures, and weak global demand. The official non-manufacturing purchasing managers index (PMI), which includes services and construction, rose to 50.7 from 50.4 in December, the highest since September last year, according to the NBS. The sub-index of services (PMI) returned to growth following 2 months of contraction, but construction PMI grew at a significantly slower pace. The composite PMI, which includes manufacturing and services, was at a 4-month high of 50.9 in January, compared to 50.3 the previous month. Eurozone governments sold a record amount of bonds directly to investors in January, seeing the highest demand ever as hopes grow for interest rate cuts to support a weakening economy. This is in stark contrast to worries around high government funding needs in 2023, especially in the United States, which sparked a bond rout and pushed borrowing costs to their highest in over a decade. In October, Euro area states raised a record 73 billion euros, that is $79.1 billion, from syndicated bond sales in January. LSEG IFR data to January 30th shows syndications are closely watched to guard demand as governments sell bonds directly to investors. At an auction, bonds are first sold to banks. Data on Tuesday showed the Eurozone economy stagnated last year. Money markets have priced in a first European Central Bank rate cut in April, boosting sentiment towards bonds. The scale of demanded government bond sales in January surpassed that seen during the COVID-19, when the ECB bought trillions of euros of debt to hold down borrowing costs. Another notable deal was Spain's, which saw the highest ever demand for an individual government bond at 138 billion euros and raised 15 billion euros from the 10-year debt sale, one of its two largest insurance in history. Bond markets posted their biggest month rally on record in November to December, rebounding from their earlier routes. Some longer terms investors have put in larger orders for the deals than last year, Barclays Combs noted. That is the side of top accolade global news updates. You can follow us on our social media platforms as displayed on your screen. Happy Wednesday.